So if you're anything like most remodelers, you've already spent money on marketing. And if you're anything like most remodelers, you aren't positive if the money you spent on marketing is a good ROI, if you're going to get that money back, or if you're just throwing it down the drain. Well, a lot of the reason for that, at least for most people, is you don't have a solid foundation for your marketing. What we're going to be doing in this episode is we're going to be going over the 6 steps that we walk through with all of our clients before we ever start doing any marketing. The idea being, once you have this, you can be sure that your marketing is going in front of the right eyes. You're no longer chasing after bad leads. You're getting your company in front of your ideal client. And on top of that, you're going to know exactly what you need to do next with your marketing.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Contractor Growth Network podcast. I'm Logan Shinholzer, and today I'm joined by Aaron Horner.
Oh, hello. Welcome to be good to be back.
Good. So, what we're talking about today is myself, Ashley, and everybody on the team, we get a lot of questions around when it comes to remodeling companies, what needs to happen from a marketing perspective? Or on the flip side, we get asked a lot of what do you think about golf cart sponsors or billboards or things that
Sure. You heard some concept and it's is this worth my money?
Is it worth it? So we have a lot of the same conversations over and over and over. And basically what today is going to be all about, and this is specifically for remodeling and interior remodeling, because the things that we're going to talk about as far as how to market a remodeling company online is different than home service, than roofing, than landscaping, just because there's certain things that work really well for a home service company. So for example, Google ads are a very good way that if somebody is their furnace is out and it's freezing in the middle of winter, you just need to be top of Google right then and there and be able to get out there and get it fixed. But in remodeling, there's not too many hey, it's the dead of winter, I have $200,000 to spend on a kitchen. So the medium in which we want to market is different.
Yeah, well, from what you're saying, there's two main differences. It's there's a needs versus a wants, and then also a level of trust you have to build up. Is that what you're saying?
That's basically what it comes down to is the needs versus wants, needs being a homeowner needs it right now versus they want it. And when you think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is this pyramid that you can Google, but basically it talks about at the very bottom is humans need food, water, air, shelter. And if they don't have that at the very top,
companionship.
Which is at the top is self-actualization to be able to say I'm living a fulfilled life. If you don't have food and water, it doesn't matter how fulfilled your life is. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the trust piece is, especially when it comes down to interior versus exterior, the level of trust that needs to be built up to have a bunch of strangers in your home where your wife and your kids are is different than a bunch of strangers that are going to be outside your home the whole time.
Yeah. So there'd be a lot more trust needed for an interior remodel, like a kitchen in the heart of your home, as opposed to some landscaping even.
Correct. So
Okay.
that's where these different mediums and these different methodologies come in. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because I see a lot of people that do things backwards, or they skip steps, or they don't really have a plan in place at all. And we have the same conversation, so I figured this would be a perfect time to jump into it and talk about what needs to happen in the exact order.
Okay, so kind of laying out the foundation and the plan for their marketing, specifically for those high trust remodelers, high-end remodeling people.
High want, high trust industry, which is the interior remodeling side of things.
Cool. Okay.
And home building's the same way. It's a little bit different because you're not living in the home, but remodeling, it's a very difficult industry just because you have to maneuver around families a lot of times that are still living there, and you're there for months on end. And by the end of the project, the homeowner wants you out, you want to get out. So it's just what do they say? Fish and family stink after 3 days. It it deals with that. Yeah. That's what they say.
Maybe your family.
Well, yeah. Not our fish though. All right. So kind of the first thing we always want to lead off into, and I'll just give you the overall overview. It goes ideal client. So understanding who we're going after, unique selling proposition and unique value. So that's going to be what you're doing to help them. Then comes the media. Then everything's built into the website. and then we're going to go through SEO and GEO, which is like all the new AI stuff. And the last thing that we're going to finish off with is like video advertising, meta advertising, mostly like the branding stuff that would be like billboards and things like that. We'll talk through each of the different facets, but just kind of say this is where we're going. It goes ICA, USP, media, website, SEO, GEO, and higher level branding.
Okay, and just to clarify, so you're what you're laying out is you're saying each of these are kind of stepping stones
It's
to
step
get
by
you.
step.
Okay, so if you skip things on this, you might be making things that don't make sense or wasting money later on.
Correct.
Okay. So then the foundation of that is the ideal client.
The ideal client. So basically what this comes down to is, I know when I first started doing all the marketing, the ideal client, the idea was like you have to know who your person is, where they shop, what's in, all that stuff. And I remember thinking, okay, like our client, for my dad's pawn company, like they shop at Costco. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that information though. Like,
well, advertise outside Costco.
Right.
Obviously.
Do I go to Costco and get a booth there?
Yeah.
But basically, it's understanding who we're actually going after. Because a lot of times, the businesses that we run, if it's a well-run business, you're kind of geared around certain types of people. So there's a lot of like attracts like. So if you are a late 50s remodeling company and you're the one doing a lot of the selling, a lot of times the people that you're going to align with are going to be late 50s as well, because it's much easier to understand what they're going through in life, what's important to them. Like, hey, their kids are just getting out of the house and going to college, so it's much easier to then understand and empathize with them of what's going on, because then you can kind of build systems around that within your business. But understanding who you're going after and who you're not going after is very important in all of this stuff.
Okay. So for Premier Pawns, the ideal client was Costco people? Is that what you're saying?
So my dad's old company, Premier Pawns, it wasn't Costco people, but that was one of the things that we talked about was who are they? And basically what we learned on the Costco premise, and coming back full circle after I learned like how to then leverage ICA, was basically these people shop at Costco. And the reason that was important was a lot of our marketing, at first we thought, okay, a pond is going to cost $50,000 to $100,000 to install.
Sure.
Plus it's going to cost $3,000 to $8,000 a year in maintenance.
Okay.
That's not chump change for people. So we thought, okay, the real clients are going to be in the Potomac and Bethesda, basically the very expensive parts around Washington, D.C.
Okay, that tracks. That makes sense.
So that's what we thought. Well, lo and behold, when we actually then looked at in like QuickBooks and stuff like that, most of the work was coming in from a town that was basically the millionaires next door. So these are people that saved up enough money that they could afford $50,000 to $100,000 to put into their yard, but they're not driving around in a Lamborghini. They're not super flashy. And basically the way to like look at that is the ponds that were being built were very natural looking ponds. Well, a lot of those Bethesda and Potomac houses were very modern style homes. So as a result, they kind of had like a misalignment in the style in which the pond was being built with the actual like layout and landscape design of the home.
Just because those people had the income didn't mean that they were the type of person who wanted the style that your company was good at.
Exactly. And that's the big thing that the ideal client avatar like helps us understand is really who are we going after? Because like, could we have just switched up and said, hey, we're going to do a bunch of modern style fountains where like maybe like their specialty was, hey, we're really good at creating a really cool fountain in your driveway when you first pull in, which is like what you would associate with like a 10,000 square foot, we did one of those for Lua. We did a testimonial for them. They had super modern house, and then she wanted a water feature to display her recent art piece that she purchased. Yeah. So it was a whole water feature just to show that thing off. Like how but like that's not something. I mean, I guess they would do that where they would say, "Great, we can build a pond around that." But like for that client,
she didn't want a pond.
Right.
It was like concrete slab water features, seamless looking.
She wanted like an homage to this thing, basically. So it's just it's a mismatch in like what the skill set and what the product of Premier Ponds was with the client that had the money. So then it became, okay, who is the client? And then when we broke down, they are people that go to Costco. How does that then align? Well, Costco's kind of like it's a big bargain store, if you will, but like it's very easy to navigate, and they always have like cool stuff like going on over there. So like that would not be necessarily like a one-to-one of like, oh, because you can buy in bulk, you could buy ponds in bulk. Like it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
But it helped us to understand like, okay, who is shopping at Costco? Well, it's the Columbia, Ellicott City people because they're a little bit more aligned with that. So it's more of just being able to paint a picture in your head of who your client is and who they're not, because that's what's going to help you deem what is important to them.
Yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense because, I mean, even being in this world and thinking about marketing, as you said that was still surprising to me because I was thinking like, well, obviously they did high-end stuff, high margin, so they're just going to be in the nicest areas of town. But that makes sense. So if you had originally put all your stuff into those nicest areas of town and didn't keep going or skip that step, you're essentially wasting those marketing dollars.
And we did that. We spent a lot of money going, hey, this is where the wealthy people are. Like $100,000 to them is, nothing compared to $100,000 to the millionaires next door. But we realized that they just valued very different things.
Sure.
So when it comes down to the ideal client, like the way that we do this with people over the phone is we first go, who is your ideal client? And instead of saying, give me like a generality or like broad information, we want to know, give me your favorite person that you've ever worked with before.
Okay.
And then that makes it much easier because if we just think in like, hey, who do you like to work with? Typically what you're going to provide is like aspirational things. And usually it's not really mired in fact. So if we can then say, actually, Aaron, give me somebody very specific, and then I'm able to ask you questions of what your relationship with them looked like and what they really valued. That's our way to understand, okay, so what you just said, Aaron, is that when you were actually in this person's home, you communicated a lot using a project management software. Let's say you use JobTread, for example, or Builder, whatever it is, JobTread, we'll say, and you're like, yeah, the client actually, they brought up a couple times how much they loved the fact that we were able to communicate in real time and have everything in this one centralized app where they could communicate, they could see photos of the project, they knew the schedule because they had like a Gantt chart in it.
Sure.
Well, if that stuff is, something that's important to the client, then that needs to become part of your marketing in some way.
Yeah, you need to be saying the things that they're looking for. So how often, because when I've talked to clients for creating video projects for them, a lot of things I would hear from people is, I mean, I do like this person and they are probably my favorite client, but I don't know if they're representative of the market. I don't know if I would find anybody else like them.
So if it's a needle in a haystack, that is like, that's kind of an issue in and of itself. So like, you don't want to build around a needle in a haystack because if you truly know that's the only person that is out there that is like that, then that would be a problem. So the bigger problem though is a lot of people don't stop and think through this stuff with their clients enough. So like back to that JobTread example that we just brought up, like on the communication side, like if the client is saying communication is really big to me, and I really want to make sure that we communicate during this process, what most people are going to say is, of course, we're going to communicate. We communicate all the time. Like, look, you and I are talking right now. That's communication.
We have
like,
great
that counts.
communication. But that'll be on the website,
right?
And
it's the same thing as like when somebody applies to work for you and they have all the buzzwords on like their skills of works well in teams, works well alone, attention to detail. Like it means nothing.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is understanding, first off, what is important to your clients, because we have some clients of ours that, hey, we work a lot in vacation homes. So what that means is the homeowner is not going to be living there. However, they need to trust whoever it is that they're basically going to give a key to that person and say, do your thing. So that then becomes, okay, maybe that ongoing communication via JobTread or Buildertrend is even more important because they're not going to be there.
Yeah, I'm working on a video right now for Fry, remodeling one of our clients, and his client, she had to move out. It was her only bathroom, so she couldn't live while they were redoing the bathroom. And so she had to go hours away and was super worried about that. But then him sending over the photos through company cam is from her testimonial. She said that was the thing that like really relieved her throughout.
Yeah. So if those are things that like are common in your client base that you go after, those are things that you need to make sure that you align with, and you actually are like helping to fill that problem with like your solution. But there's so many, what is important to somebody that is 80 years old trying to do aging in place in their house is very different than somebody who is 30 years old that just moved into like their starter home versus somebody who's 40 years old that's, 10 years into their starter home, and now they're saying, we love the neighborhood, but we do not want to move. However, we've got, 2 kids that are under the age of 6 that it's going to be a war zone over here if we're remodeling the whole time. So to be able to be really good for the aging in place versus the starter home versus the 40s, and they've built up some money and they're able to spend on this, it's too hard to be great for all 3 different types of people, because what's important to them is all going to be very different, because the 30-year-olds want it cheap but look good. They never really spent money on remodeling before because they're kind of house poor. The 80-year-olds, they got all the time in the world, but they could be kind of a pain in the butt, because what's important to them is that they nitpick you over your shoulder. And like,
sure,
you may be great at that, of like, hey, we love people that nitpick, but like maybe you don't. So that's where that understanding who you're going after really makes a big difference.
Okay. And a lot of people, they like those different categories, but the idea of narrowing down to one is scary, because then that limits the market, limits the reach. What are the pros of, like, would you recommend having a couple ideal clients?
I mean, the more that you have, the harder it is. I mean, like, the answer is like, if you need to, yes, like definitely, like you can have multiple, like we have different psychographics and like personas for our ideal clients, but they're typically, some people have basically done their own marketing a lot in the past, and that is different versus somebody that's like, hey, I've been through 2 marketing agencies already. Let's have a conversation. So they're kind of coming in with different like problems. It's almost like if you're really good at selling cars, but you have somebody that comes on the lot in an Uber because their car broke down, that's a very different sale and a very different approach than somebody that is driving there in their own car and they're just looking, because then you need to shift your approach.
Okay.
So, to be good at both approaches is difficult. So
become a generalist. And
and the more specific that you can get into, like I had a call with prospect yesterday, and she was like, look, we are really good at working with growing families, which works out because a lot of what they do is focused around, if it's a growing family, that's going to be somebody that's younger, which is good. They do a lot of additions because now it's talking about expansion, or it's, hey, because you're growing families, we may not even need to do an addition. What we could do is actually, she was talking about this, like knocking down a lot of the walls and just reconfiguring what's already in the space and making that happen instead. Okay. So because she knows who she wants to go after, it then becomes much easier to say, hey, it's not like, oh, you have a growing family, we're really good at installing grab bars, because that would be a total mismatch. Yeah. It's more of, if you need space, that's what we want. Like I even talked to somebody out at Kyle Hunt's Remodelers, like the Rise conference, and she was talking about basically when they remodel or build a home, she was talking about like how much insulation that she puts into the walls, and how she was like, you just have to kind of experience it. But like when you walk in, like every floor that you're on, the air feels the same. Like there's no drop in temperature, and it's this whole building science stuff. And I was like, how did you come up with that? And she was like, the clients that we work with absolutely love it. And then once we started talking more about the ideal client, she said, actually, I just lost a project to somebody because I brought up the whole building science and how much we invest into it. And they were like a younger family. And honestly, they just cared about the space. They didn't care about the drops in temperature. And I was like, as she was describing it to me, and, we have 1 3/4 kids. You've got 2 kids. Like, if you had the option of more space versus same air temperature on each level, what are you picking?
Yeah, maximizing your space. So you're saying, okay. So it's like, if there's only one message you can get across to these people, whether it's like the tagline on the website or social media post, a video, whatever, it's like deciding what that thing is based on your markets.
Yes. Yeah. It's just understanding, like having a an in-depth understanding of what your client is wanting, both from like the actual outcome of their project. So what's the kitchen gonna look like? What's the bathroom gonna look like? What's the whole home gonna look like? But on top of that, understanding what concerns they have when it comes to starting a remodeling project. Is that going to be that they're already stretched thin because they're like in the thick of their careers and they need some company that is very good about communicating virtually or quickly or whatever that is? The more that you can understand your ideal client and know what they are really wanting and what their problems are, the easier it is to then align everything else up with that.
Okay, so like in the examples you've given, like, if you're dealing with like those vacation clients, like let's think even niche down to like high-end home remodels. There's still like we do a lot of vacation homes versus we do a lot of growing families. Vacation homes, you're going to be more likely, or you should be more likely to promote things like trusted since, for the last 20 years or something like that, giving how long you've been in business and stats around reliability, trust, communication, things like that. Whereas if you're doing that communication for the growing family, you're going to be doing a lot more communication about like making the most out of your home, expanding your space, maybe additions, things like that.
So that all then comes into part two, which is the unique selling proposition, or in other words, like what are you doing that is special and valuable to your clients?
Okay.
So let's go back to that original example of the like the vacation homes, right?
Yep.
So on vacation homes, so if you now know that your ideal client is somebody that has a vacation home in your area, which means that, and even with this, like let's say the vacation home one, if they're Airbnb-ing it out, are they going to most likely want to pay top dollar? Right.
Yeah.
Versus if this is a vacation home that they and their family pops in and out of, it's a very different clientele.
Yeah, different levels of work. I've been in enough Airbnbs to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see that, or it's like, I was just talking to my dad about this. He went to an Airbnb, and it's like old school Airbnbs where you would walk in and they were amazing, and now you walk in and if it's run by a property management company or not, because it's like it looks great in photos, but you show up and they have one roll of toilet paper for the entire family for the week.
Yeah. All the details are mixed. It was specifically made to look good in a photo.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about nuances within nuances within nuances. So it's not just, hey, we're really good at remodeling. It's we're really good at interior remodeling for vacation homes for people that actually still live in that home, because that's going to be a very different setup than renting it out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So then with that, once you understand those elements of it and what's important to them, then you're able to like build around this, which is, okay, back to that idea of, let's just say it's vacation homes and it is they live there, they
like
go
a
on vacation
snowbird.
a lot. Yeah. So it's got to be done right. So if that's the scenario, then what we want to make sure is, first off, what you do that's special and valuable to them is, if they are going to be from afar, they're probably very into communication and on-time communication because they're not living in it. So as a result of that, you need to make sure that your communication is great. So then your role is to not just say our communication is great, it's actually just like figuring out in a very concrete way, what are the specific things that you do that make your communication really great for that exact type of person.
Okay, I'm following you now. So the next step is saying, okay, this is the thing that's important to them. And now not only do we just say we have good communication, but what's the factual thing? What's the actual unique thing that we do that doesn't just say we have communication, but proves it?
It's basically taking it from a subjective thing of we have good communication, like how you would define good communication is different than how I would define good communication, versus if I told you every single day that we're on the job, which is Monday through Friday, you're going to get a daily log of what work was done with a photo of the work. Then I can just ask you, not did I communicate well, it's, hey, did I provide you with a daily log of what we did that day?
Yeah.
And then it becomes a very simple yes or no from you of did we do it or did we not do it? So that's where this next piece comes in of actually being able to stop and identify and articulate what are those specific things that we are doing on the solution side to the problems, whether it's a problem of the space itself or the problem associated with hiring a remodeling company. That's what we need to be able to understand and pull out of the remodeling companies that we talk to.
Okay.
Just because a lot of times they're too close to it to realize like, well, we communicate well. And I'm like, do you have a project management software? And they're like, well, yeah, we use Builder Trend. And I go, okay, well, like, how often do you use it? They're like, well, I mean, we do it on every project.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do clients like that, or is that more of just like a nice to have? And they're like, honestly, clients absolutely love it.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah. It's a feature of that.
Right.
Okay.
So it's like that kind of stuff where they're like, oh, well, now that you mention it, people absolutely love the fact that we do this, or, this is where we start to really reverse engineer, like on that ideal client, like what did you do for them from a deliverable standpoint, and why'd you do those?
Okay.
Well, we knocked down walls, we did this, this, and this, and it's like, okay, well, why? And it's like, well, they needed more space, so instead of doing an addition, which would have cost way more than the budget, we were within budget, and we just knocked down walls, but then since we were already in there doing the construction to give them more space, we wanted to look good because they wanted to look good. So what we also did was we did this really nice, we started off with like 2D mood board just to get a vibe for what they wanted. Then we showed them different floor plan layouts. Then we actually took all that, put it into a 3D rendering, so they were actually able to like visually like almost like experience the space.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're able to see how the space was going to function, but also how it was going to look.
Okay.
And then that made them a lot more comfortable. And I'm
Okay.
like,
Okay.
so that all becomes part of the solution, which when you're able to talk about a specific client, that then a lot of that's like, okay, well, now that you're bringing this up, do you do this process a lot? And they're like, well, yeah, it always starts off with mood boards and floor plan selections, then 3D renderings. And it's like, okay, when you show a prospect a 3D rendering, is it cool? Or again, is it just like a check into the box? And like, no, they're like blown away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, great. Because all this stuff is all things that need to happen from a marketing perspective, and we'll go through like the media and that stuff later, but being able to stop and just identify what are the unique things that you're doing that your clients like during the actual process, that's where all this stuff is then eventually going to come in.
Okay, so for the people listening to this, they have the good examples that we've just given them, but what questions do they need to ask themselves to get those answers, like with those unique things? Because a lot of times you could be so close to it that you don't know what those are.
Yeah, the best thing to do here, and we do this like on all of our sales calls where we like have like a set workbook that we work through with all of this stuff. But like when it comes to your ideal client, the most important thing is going to be just some basic like demographics questions, which is going to be like, where do they live? How old are they? Things like that. It's more of just like the concrete things. Then it goes to scope of work, which is basically what did you do for them?
Yeah.
And then you need to identify for each of the things that you did for them why you did that. So, for example, if you did custom cabinetry in their kitchen, well, why'd you do that? Well, they had a bunch of appliances that was taking up all their counter space. So it's like, okay, cool. So now we know that the issue was they had a bunch of appliances all over their counters, so they had no more countertop space. So as a result, we actually built in custom cabinetry.
Yeah, they want some more functionality for the kitchen. Okay.
And then the last piece is being able to walk through step by step what was the actual journey that they went through and what was the process of working with them. The way that we typically break it down is into like 4 main parts, which is the initial discovery with them. And basically what we call it is like finding the bright spots. So it's, if you think back to your ideal client as you did this with them, were there any specific things that they called out to you that they really liked? And that's what we call a bright spot, but basically it's on the discovery, was there anything unique and special? So did they like that you called them back immediately? Did they like that when you showed up, like you were in, like any of that stuff? Like, was there anything specific on that actual discovery of working with them that stood out to them? Then comes into the design and pre-construction. So back to that idea of like, did they fall out of their chair when you show them that 3D rendering because it was just so lifelike that they started tearing up?
Okay.
Then the construction, which is the actual project, like the process of building it out. When that happened, was there anything specific that they really called out that they liked? Did you do a temporary kitchen and they brought up a couple times about how nice that was? And then the last thing is on the completion. So once you're done, is there anything specific that they brought up to you that they liked? Whether that's, hey, I love that you actually did your own walkthrough and created your own punch list instead of just putting that all on me. Or I loved that, 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months after the project was done, you came back out and did like a proactive warranty walkthrough.
Okay.
So it's basically things that are coming directly from the homeowner, that being able to stop and look at your favorite client that you want to duplicate and looking at those things, that will help you really identify, okay, what are the specific things that we're putting in place to help make this type of person feel much better.
Okay, so once again, making it concrete, having real people examples, and going back to those so that way you're not just making up what you think it is,
Yes.
but actually getting examples.
Yes, because that's the same thing of back to like the hiring an employee. If you're like, Aaron, walk me through a time that you had multiple projects on your plate. How'd you handle it? And usually if you just ask a very vague question, they're going to go, well, usually what I do is I just like really stop and I think and I strategize and I time block and yada, yada, yada. And at the end of it, it always turns out.
Yeah.
And the interviewer, if they're newer, like, that's a great answer.
They go, awesome. That's exactly what
That's what we're looking
yeah,
for.
Wow.
Versus if I go, okay, Aaron, that sounds great. Give me a specific time that you actually did that. I'm then going to ask very detailed questions around it because first off, I want to see if you're lying. Second off, I want to actually understand how you thought through it because there's no way that if this was that tough of a scenario that it was, flawless.
Yeah, an easy.
Yeah, so I want to know what that all looked like. So it's the same thing here of being able to pick one person and not just like and every so often I hop on the phone with somebody that's like, I already know who my ideal client is. It's a bunch of people. And those calls never work out because it's usually people that like they already have in their head exactly what it is versus like being open to the idea of like, hey, you actually may have a favorite client and they're like, no, everybody's different. And it's like, okay, well, if everybody's different, then you're going to have a bunch of marketing approaches or just be very generic and vague to be able to appeal to everybody. And if that's the case, it's going to be very hard for us to market for you.
And then you can stand out on price.
Correct. And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
If it's like, if you're willing to do a kitchen and a fence outside, and it's like, I don't really care what the marketing is, whatever's going to make the most amount of money, those are also typically they don't work out as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And then that also seems like a good opportunity if you can't come up with anything, like we suggest to people, is going through their past reviews, like even the Google reviews, and seeing what people have said there.
Yeah, because typically with reviews, they're going to be a little bit more vague of like they communicated really well and they were always on time. So they're not going to be like, hey, they did daily logs in Builder Trend or Job Tread.
Okay.
So they're not going to be like as detailed as that, but that'll give you some good
starting point.
Yeah, good jump off points. And it's also like these are good things to talk about with the team because like what the salesperson is going to have is different than the designer, which is different than the actual project manager as far as like, all right, let's pick up the Aaron Horner family. Let's talk about their project. What did you,
highlights from everybody.
Yeah, so as you go through it, everybody's going to have their own stuff. If you're like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. So that's the idea of like ideal client avatar of understanding who you're going after and then the value propositions. A lot of times what we have found is that a lot of the actual final product itself, unless you have like an in with like a local cabinet shop that does like, just incredible cabinets, or you're the only person that has access to a certain type of tile or like, things like that. Most of the time, the actual ability to have the end final product across different higher end remodeling companies is all the same. So the differentiators is really coming down to design process up front or the ability to like maybe you don't do in-house design, but the right architects or the right designers to be able to like, all right, Aaron, tell me about your project. And you're like, I want ultra modern. I'm going like all concrete, very brutalist. I wouldn't then pair you up with somebody that's like super like perfect. We're going to do wallpaper everywhere.
Yeah, you're going to love it.
Right. Yeah. So that could be the other side of it. So it's the process in which you do the whole design and pre-construction process up front, and then the actual during the actual construction part, those things that you put in place of are you doing like dust protection? Are you how many jobs does your project manager run in a single time? Are they doing 15 jobs at a time, which then they're really only able to spend X amount of time per client, or are they, doing two to four, which is a lot different. So those are some of the elements of like what actually makes it unique and special and different, more so than like the final product, unless you have some or some ability of like, in the pond world, it was different because there was only really, even like a very busy area for pond people, you're really only going to have like 3 to maybe 8 people per metro compared to a remodeling company where you're going to have 3 to 8 per town.
Yeah.
So there is a level of like a lot of the skill sets are very similar. unless you are like, hey, we only work with like level 4 carpenters or whatever that stuff is. Like it's a whole different thing. But the actual process in which you take people in, that then becomes a very important piece of all this.
Okay. And you don't have to be the only, okay. Because especially when you start talking about unique selling proposition, it also might sound like you have to be the only person that does this ever. But it's the combination of both, like you do this specific thing, whether it's your communication or however your specific design process, and you have a specific market, and you have a specific clientele. But you combine all three of those, and now suddenly you have like something that's very unique.
Yes, exactly. So it's not necessarily that like you're the only one that does design or you're the only one that uses chief architect or like that kind of stuff. A lot of this is your ability to show this stuff off. That is more impactful.
Okay.
Like, it's almost like, think about like the coaching, like fitness coaching. Like if you're trying to lose 30 pounds and you went to Google, how many coaching programs do you think you could find personally to help you lose 30 pounds?
Yeah, I would think tons. Yeah.
Tons. So what makes them all different? They're all kind of the same. Like it's all about like calories in, calories out. You know, maybe the different coaches are going to be different, where one is going to be like, I'm a female that works with females, or one is, hey, I'm older, so I'm going to work with you, where I understand that you are also older. So like there's little like niches within that, but ultimately the way that you get people from point A to point B is very, very similar. In that sense. The big differentiators is like the actual experience that they're going to go through, but even still, it's going to be semi-similar. So now it comes down to how much proof can you actually say up front, like, hey, I know they say they communicate, but what we do is we have weekly walkthroughs, we use JobTread, and your project manager, you will have their cell phone number and you'll have my cell phone number as the owner of the company. So if you ever need anything, let me know. They will be on site at least 3 times per week.
Okay.
So it goes from like a very like, you know, how much can we just do like the very generality pieces to like how concrete can we make it? That's the stuff that really shows proof.
Okay, cool. Okay. What's after that?
Media. So now that we know who we're going after and what we do special and different, in the world of remodeling, the visuals are everything. Like we build out these feature project pages, which is basically like project walkthroughs on websites. Those are like the number 2 most trafficked pages on websites behind the homepage.
Yeah.
So people want to come in, and the first thing they wanted to see, and I remember I was talking to an old client of ours like 7-8 years ago, and he was the first one that like turned me on to that approach. Was like, yeah, when somebody comes to my website, the first thing they wanted to see is like my work. And I was like, oh, but don't they want to like learn more about you and all that stuff? But like that is the reality of it. And as my wife and I are about to go through another remodel, it's very much like I'm showing her the websites of like various builders and remodelers in the area, and the first thing that she wants to see is, let me see their work.
Well, I want to know if they can do the thing we're asking them to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you want that same brutalist style of all concrete, and I show you somebody that's all, Spanish style or like all wallpaper, there's going to be a direct misalignment there.
Yeah.
So the media has to be very, very dialed in. We talk a lot about what good media versus what bad media really is. So Aaron, you're a media guy.
I am.
You fly out, you do a lot of videography. We'll go videography first, and then we'll talk about photography, and then we'll end with like just some like the other visuals.
Okay.
What is the difference between good videography for a higher end remodeling company versus bad videography for a higher end remodeling company look like?
I mean, there's so much there. From my understanding of where this overall thing is heading, the most important thing here is proving the thing. Like, so when we started off with the client, we started off with what they need. We know how we're going to fulfill it. And the media is about like now proving that to them, basically. Is that what you're?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay. So, I mean, to me, the biggest thing is thinking about how can I show this in a way that's not just me saying it to camera. And how can we do this in a way that it proves it without just talking about ourselves. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. I mean, just to limit it to photos, like if your thing is the custom cabinetry or something like that, like the quality of work, like a small way you might not think about is when you're taking photos of the projects, you want more up-close photos of the details of the work. You want to see kind of the finer pieces of it. If you're one that's really about the overall style of it and you have designers and stuff, another photo that you might not think about is like a lot of times we have photographers take pictures of the plants in the room. Like you didn't make the plant, you didn't put the plant there, but it's not about the plant. It's about seeing all of the photos there and getting a feeling for the space. So it's I think that's those are a couple examples of, at least in photography, proving your value in ways that you might not immediately think, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like we tell, especially if you're like on the higher end side, we talk to people about like, look, you actually want something that's more like an interior design photographer versus a real estate photographer.
Yeah, because the real estate photographer's job is they want to maximize the space, so they go wide angle lens, get back in the corner. There's not much artistic talent to it. It's just, hey, let's make this room look bright and open.
Yeah. So like when we talk to people about this, the idea is that like the best leads that come in are usually going to be the referrals.
Yeah.
And usually that's because they're going to be in the space. So they're going to be in the kitchen that this other company did for Aaron. So I'm in Aaron's kitchen going, wow, this looks great. And the reason, or the fact that I'm in the kitchen means that I can walk up and see the cabinets. I can touch the countertops. I can actually like experience how the space is because I'm immersed in it, the same way that if you're back to that car salesman example, like the feel of the wheel seals the deal is what they say, of like, if they can get you into the car and test drive it, like the likelihood that you're going to go home in that car goes way up compared to if you're just looking at it from afar.
Yeah.
So that's where photography comes in, and videography does a great job of this as well, of showing the craftsmanship that goes into these projects if it's done correctly. But if it's just, your own photos or real estate photography where it's simply just from afar, it's going to miss a lot of those little details. And those little details are the difference between a really high-end project versus like an elevated handyman or like person that can do it all themselves coming in.
Yeah, so like going back to our example of the vacation home person, like if they're wanting somebody that, obviously if this is their vacation home, it's something that's a little bit more luxurious, they have the money to pay for it, that kind of stuff. Instead of just talking about your quality of work, you can show it through your photos and the videos as well. Like not just how you take them, but also having the space prepped beforehand, having everything cleaned up and cleared out, and then having actually set dressed as well. That means like putting up decorations in there, plants, cutting boards in kitchens.
Like staging it.
Staging it. Yeah, exactly. That stuff makes a big difference. It's another thing you wouldn't immediately think about.
Yeah, we have a client out in the Seattle area right now that they are working with a photographer that it's 6.5 hours for a shoot. And it's like the whole home, so it's a big shoot, but a lot of that is...
That's long.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting and staging it correctly because the focal points that they're capturing in it, I mean, it's the difference between just capturing a blank space versus a space that looks like there's a family in it. Kind of back to what you said, that's the story associated with it. Yeah. So if you're now trying to attract those growing families, then the staging elements that you're going to have in there are not like an apron that says like, grandma's kitchen. Like you're going to actually have things that...
You want to make it as easy as possible for your ideal client to picture themselves in that space.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly, like, if I could summarize what good media does in one sentence, it is that.
It's the thing I just said.
It was really good.
Dude, I'm so glad you brought me on.
So that's what the media is meant to do, is really, it's the excitement piece. So if I showed you a kitchen and it looks like a good kitchen, but I took it with my iPhone photos, the likelihood that you're going to go, wow, that's incredible, is much lower versus if I hired like a really good photographer who understands all the things that we're talking about and like the visual storytelling components of all this stuff as well. Because like the goal is for you to look at those pictures and go, wow, I want this in my home. Yeah. And when we get that thought across, it's way more likely that they're then going to want to entertain hiring you, because what most people will do is just say, if you need to get your kitchen done, we're really good. But the first piece is, people are about to spend a lot of money with you and invite you into their home for a very long time. You need to make sure that what you are doing is like exciting to them, and media is like the first way to get them excited.
Yeah, okay, so it's like, I mean, like a common thing that a lot of people say is like, I want my work to speak for itself. Like people that aren't interested in marketing, but when I was talking to clients about video, the main thing I would say is, yeah, you can let your work speak for itself. We just need to give it a wider audience to speak to. Yeah. And so the goal of your media is just to put your work on the best stage possible. Like give it the best like my goal was to always make their things look as beautiful in photos as it actually does in real life.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you think about like your work experience, and then like when you build a resume, like
Yeah.
you want your resume to not be false or inaccurate, but you want your resume to highlight all the great things. You don't want it to be like, and by the way, I was late 15% of the time.
Yeah.
Like you just want that where it's like the resume is meant to like make you look 10% better. That's kind of how you want to view your photos, where it's like the lighting is going to be spot on. It's going to look a certain way. So like it's you just want your projects to pop 10% more in the photos as much as possible.
Yeah, because it's like you give it, you know what the project's supposed to look like. You have so much context for how they're going to use it and stuff. That is context that your ideal client wouldn't have.
Correct.
Just coming into it blind. So it's like by adding in the set dressing, by adding in like the making sure the lighting is exactly right. Like they're seeing it in the best possible conditions. So that benefit of the doubt you give your own work and your clients give because they know the space, potential clients won't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the last piece, like outside of video and photos, is just like the other quote unquote media, which is going to come down to like the designs and things like that. So, if you are creating, like in your case, like a design, like if it's the design that you're basically going to give to your subs, where it's just like the actual like schematics, that's like, here's where all the fans are going to go, and here's where the lights are going to go. Like there's a lot that it's basically trying to sell a car with just like a CAD drawing of a car versus like actually showing the beauty of the car and things like that. So like when it comes to design work, I know not everybody does like hyper realistic designs, but like the closer that you can get it to where they're going, wow, I want that exact thing in my home, the more likely it is that they're going to then say, all right, I want that exact thing in my home.
Dude, and honestly, you don't have much of an excuse anymore. I was looking at the Facebook group for the users of Chief Architect and seeing what they were able to do with taking their not bad looking, but pretty standard, definitely not photorealistic renderings of a space. And then they put it into ChatGPT and says, here's my rendering for a project coming up. Turn this into a photorealistic image, high quality, that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah.
And you'll have to obviously preface like, here's the actual,
here's the finishes and all. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Here's
that
to
stuff.
Scale what it's going to be, and here's the rendering from ChatGPT or something like that. But like, it's so easy at this point to make that happen.
Yeah, and we did this like with our bathroom. Like the designer, like they even like superimposed like a baby into it because it was like it was a bathroom that we're adding to become a nursery, and they added that stuff in, and they added in like the actual furniture that we had, and like what it did was it made it so realistic of a space that like my wife was showing everybody that walked in our door the renderings for this project, because it wasn't just like, here's where the wallpaper is going to go, here's where the actual new shelves are going to go. It was like, here's actually the other elements, like the furniture that like,
let me just show you what it's going to look like in the end.
Exactly. Like that way. So that way it was very easy for us to see that. Plus, whenever like the subs would come in and do the work, we then would like, and because they hung up like outside the room, like this is what it's going to look like. We knew that there was no like, oh, they were just handed basically like the schematics or like the blueprints that like don't actually show the end picture.
Yeah.
It's, they were able to walk by it and see like, okay,
this is what it'll be.
This is what it's going to look like. Yeah.
That's
so
great.
Like,
I didn't even think about that. That's
so that
great.
was super helpful for us, but making sure that we have right videos that do storytelling, the right photos that really make your stuff pop. And then on top of that, the other like visual components that go into this, the more user-friendly, the more that people can like quickly look at it and go, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Like even back to that Gantt chart example, like, I had a neighbor that had their basement redone, and he showed everybody that walked by his Gantt chart. And lo and behold, a year later, across the street directly from him, his neighbor was getting an addition put on their house. It was done by the exact same construction company that did my neighbor's house, because, and I'm sure, it was the Gantt chart. And he was that, because he was an engineer, so he loved the Gantt chart. But he showed everybody that. So if that's the case, if you're a Gantt chart type of company and you like to go after people that love Gantt charts, perfect. You need to show that stuff off.
Okay, that makes sense.
So now we know who we're going after, what we do that makes us special and unique, and we have the media associated with it. Then, and really only then, is when we want to then build out the website.
Before we move on from media, I have one more thing.
Yes.
Testimonial. I would be remiss to not say on these, just quick thing is,
like video testimonial.
the video testimonial, make sure your client is repeating back that story of who your ideal client's going to be. Like, people should look at that video and picture themselves as that person. They should look at it and say, like, yes, Fry is a great example. He had people come in and say, like, we saw your cookie bake remodel video, and basically what they're dealing with, that's exactly what we want. And so he basically just did the same project twice because they watched the video and were like, yes, that everything they said, the problems they're dealing with, the things they value, that's us.
So that then piggybacks it into the website. And the website, there's a handful of like really core pages that you have to have on there. But a lot of the stuff that we just went through that's important to the client and what you do that's special needs to have a place on the website.
Yeah.
So I remember it was like a couple weeks ago, I was talking to one of our clients we just finished off the website for. And part of it is what we built out was these feature project pages, which are basically project walkthrough pages that show what the before looked like, what the problem the homeowner was dealing with, what the process, so walking through design and then construction and all that kind of stuff, and then actually showing off the final result with like nice high-end professional photos. He was like, yeah, we had a client that came in and signed on for a design retainer because they saw that and said, I basically want that exact thing in my home. And it wasn't just like on the featured project page. It wasn't just like a bunch of photos with no rhyme or reason or no story behind it, because there's usually, if you think about the process and the experience that you've worked really hard on of, giving to clients, that kind of falls by the wayside with just photos and only photos. You need photos that are great because it's going to allow people to see, okay, like if they're able to get projects to this level and it looks this good, the likelihood that they have their stuff together is much higher. But there's a lot of nuance and a lot of context that gets missed. So these feature project pages need to give the backstory and the process in which we got there to be able to say, this is the type of client, this is what they were dealing with, this is how we approached it, and this was the final outcome. It's the same storytelling principle of like problem solution impact that we want, but it's now done on a project walkthrough page.
Okay, because typically what I'll see when I've like looked at these things before is contractors will have like one of three options for showing off their work. They'll have like a gallery page, which is just like every kitchen they've ever done. You scroll through them and it's just like one photo of each kitchen. Or it'll be like they'll have a project page, but it's really just a set of photos. And then the featured project page is that same thing, single project set of photos, but with the context of the testimonial, the context of what their mission was, what the process was like, design renderings, everything. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I would say the best way to describe it is think about you're about to hire a marketing company, right? And you're a remodeler. And the first case, which is the gallery, is the same thing as if we put up just a bunch of random screenshots from clients. Yeah. And we're like, this is what clients say to us, but we're really picking and choosing various screenshots, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Then the next level up, which is the just a bunch of photos of a kitchen. The next level up is going to be all of our reviews, right? Which is just simply like letting people do the talking of what it's looked like to work with us. And the final piece, which is the project walkthroughs, is kind of like us creating case studies to say, this was the problem, this is what we did, this was the result, and here are some of the components that go into it. So it's basically what you're able to do is the level of depth that each of these need to go through, the more case studies that you have compared to screenshots, compared to just reviews, the better.
Well, it better answers that question that you were talking about with Audrey earlier is can they
even do it?
Like that's all I care about. That's a starting point at least.
Yeah, like the company that Chris, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, the company that he works for, a higher-end remodeling company here in Charlotte, we were looking a few years ago for a company that could actually come in and redo our basement. And the issue with our basement in Charlotte is, first off, not many homes in Charlotte has basements. So it's not a super common thing. In our basement, on one side, it's 6 feet 8 inches. On the other side, it slopes down to 7 feet 8 inches. But basically, if we were to just finish it off, it would be a very short basement, which for Audrey and I would be okay.
You're saying the ceiling height is 6 foot?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, 6'8". So I'm 5'8", so I've got plenty of clearance.
Set,
yeah. But if somebody moves in and they look at that, they're like, "What's up with this?" Like, I feel like I'm in like the Harry Potter closet.
Yeah. Now this is just where I go to pretend to be tall.
Yeah, exactly. I set all my Zoom cameras up right there, and then just put like the ruler on the like a lineup.
Just your height behind you. So people are like, wow,
everybody
he's
thinks,
tall, dude.
But when we were looking at basement companies, like the first question, because I couldn't find anything around Charlotte of like people that actually seemed even remotely able to do what we wanted. So that was the first big issue. But the reason I brought up Chris is I think and this is all a few years ago, like a year ago, they actually put up a project on their website that I live in Dilworth in Charlotte, and I needed my basement to pretty much be the floor drilled through and finished off, which I was like, I don't even know if that's possible. Well, they put up an actual project walkthrough that showed in Dilworth. I was like, oh, that's my neighborhood. And it actually showed them drilling through the floor to then be able to rebuild it. And I was like, oh, that was the exact project. So
Yeah.
I can physically see that they have done this thing before. So the likelihood that if we were to revisit this basement project, that we'd go back to them is very high because I see they've already done it. I don't have to guess if they know how to do it.
Yeah, that's good. That might be even more revealing to people because it's like you have the curse of knowledge being a contractor. You know all the things that are possible. A homeowner might literally be asking themselves, I don't know if the thing I want done is possible or if anybody's ever done it before.
And a lot of that it comes down to when it's whole home remodeling. Again, the one of the ladies I talked to yesterday was a lot of these growing families just think addition because they don't know about just knocking down walls and reconfiguring the space that's already in their home.
They don't have the idea for it.
Yeah, so it's a lot of educating around that. So, and on her website, it was her photos were amazing. It was all final photos. So there was no context of, actually, we went from this very cramped kitchen to this expansive kitchen because we were able to knock down walls. We did a whole design. Here's so when it comes to, if you're just doing more of pull and replace, which is just basically the more cosmetic stuff, but not really reconfiguring stuff and doing more of the larger problem-solving components, that's where the process comes into play even more as far as what needs to happen. But we still need to make sure that we're showing the end result that gets people excited enough because, if you come to me and say, hey, actually, I can do all this stuff without doing an addition, it's going to save some money, but you're going to be living in a remodel with your young family. We're going to be loud. We're going to be here for 3 months.
Yeah.
All that stuff. It still has to get me excited enough to go, you know what? We can endure that for 3 months. No big deal. Let's do it because the end result has to be that exciting to me.
Sure.
So that's what the featured project page should do is show specific almost case studies of the projects that you have done and the best way to approach well, how many do I need and what should I do? Typically what we do on the SEO side with clients is we say, what is the main service in the main area that you'd like to be found in? And then we say, okay, now great. Based off of that, what projects do we have that align with that in that area? Because it's becoming a game of proof where if I can, back to that basement example, if that was a basement in some other part of town, I may be going, well, that's fine. I see that they can physically do that. But the fact that I know that in my specific basement in Dilworth, it's half basement, half crawl space because I think the digging is so rough where we are that if I saw that this was on the lake an hour north, I would go, well, that's probably different digging up there. That's much easier. But here, you're going to have to really dig through rock. So now that I see that you're actually doing it in my location, I'm now way more certain that you're able to at least address my problem a lot better than somebody who's only done basements an hour away on the lake.
Yeah. Because even if somebody else comes to you and says, oh, yeah, I could probably do that. Or even if they say, I can, you're probably still thinking in the back of your head, yeah, but can they?
Can you? What are the issues? Is this going to drag out and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So project pages are meant to help out with those sorts of things.
Okay.
Then you're going to have what happens from there, it's the design page. So you want to actually have a page that's dedicated to, if you're really big on design and pre-construction, showing that off. And not just in a way that's here's and we used to do this all the time of here's the 10 steps in just bullet point form of what we go through. First off, we used to do pretty in-depth process videos for clients. How popular were process videos?
The clients loved them.
Yeah. But who didn't love them?
The homeowners, it was too long, too cumbersome, not the best way for them to consume that information.
Exactly. So we want to be able to lay out the process of working with somebody. We actually, what we just started doing is breaking it out into 2 different parts. So the first part is going to be one page is dedicated to design and pre-construction. Because ultimately what you do during the actual experience side of things of the build doesn't really matter unless we actually get them to there.
Yeah.
So it's based around the design part, and then the other part is what we're deeming to be like behind the scenes or inside your remodel. But like the design part is, first think about your homeowners. Like the first thing that we solve is not like this is our process, but more of like, why do you even need design? Not everybody wants to pay for a design. They think it's going to slow down the project. But in reality, there's a lot of benefits to design where, they had a study that came out that said design build actually is going to be cheaper and faster and have way less change orders and headaches during the process. So if somebody comes in and goes, nah, I don't think we need a design, and you go, okay, well, if we do a design, statistically speaking, it's going to be cheaper, faster, and have less change orders. What's the likelihood that you go, yeah, it's cool, but like I'd rather pay more, have it, so you want to sell the idea of design and then, what design helps out with, then be able to explain your process and why you do each of the steps, make it easy so it's not like a 30-step process, and then talk through some of the uniquenesses that your design has. So if that's, you actually have a showroom, so you don't have to do a design and then go to every single showroom, highlight that. Or if you work with architects or interior designers, or maybe design's not directly in-house, but because you're working with an outside person, they have a ton of creativity. So now it's like, the client's going to get a more in-depth design because it's somebody that's like specializes only in design or architecture versus remodeling design, which is maybe they're more focused on like design as it falls within remodeling. You can actually get a more creative solution at the end of it from a design perspective. So
finding the benefit.
Yeah, whatever your uniquenesses are and your benefits are, again, it has to align with your clientele. So if your clientele is all about efficiency and you're like, perfect, we actually work with an outsourced interior designer who's going to come up with the most wallpaper solutions ever. You don't care about that. You care about something that's fast and like it's got to be good enough, but it's got to be efficient. Like that's the idea.
Okay, nice.
So we want to be able to highlight that. Same thing with what are you doing behind the scenes? That's like you're inside your remodel. That's then like on all your service pages, you want to first off have a page for every single service that you provide. Because simply, if somebody's Googling, this will get more into SEO, but if somebody's Googling like kitchen remodeling near me, if you just have a page that says, hey, we do remodeling, kitchens, bathrooms, additions, basements, you're going to miss out on not only getting found by Google, but the emotional pieces that we talked about on the ideal client and what you do that's unique and special as it pertains to a kitchen is very different than a bathroom, which is very different than a basement. Kitchen, you've only got one. So it's going to be a lot of emotion if you have a growing family and they're stuck in a house without a kitchen. So you really want to lean into like, hey, when we do your kitchen, these are the experiential things that we're going to do to make it efficient. But with a bathroom, most people have more than one bathroom in their home. So it just kind of sucks, but you may have to go downstairs to shower for the next 6 weeks, not upstairs. But with kitchen, you may have to eat at a restaurant for 3 months instead. And then a basement may have no impact on that because it's a walkout basement and they can just come, the remodeling company goes in and out of the walkout side. So all it is you're just hearing them and that's about it. So each service is a very different emotion and outcome associated with it. So aside from just a Google perspective, you want to be able to talk through your specific examples and problems and solutions and things like that for each of the services so prospects can really feel the love and the intentionality around how you approach that specific project.
I see. So that's why it's specific to have different service pages rather than having all of that just combined on
into
one page.
Because you can't let out all the emotion as it pertains to a kitchen and a bathroom and a whole home and an addition and like all that stuff.
There's different motivators for getting it done.
For everything.
There's different worries.
Okay. And that's like the specificity is what people want and it's what Google wants. So those are like the main ones are going to be like your project pages, your service pages, your design, and then your like behind the scenes pages, and then anything else. I mean, contact page, about us page, home page are all standards. If you have a showroom, make sure you do that justice as well, where you're basically capturing a showroom as if it's like a project of yours, because if it looks beautiful, show that stuff off. So that's some of the stuff, but the website is really meant to act like the resume for the business, because at the end of the day, the people are, especially in this industry, they're going to the website and spending a lot of time to see the projects and learn more about you, because this is high excitement, high trust. So it's going to be much longer where somebody's going to be immersed in your world before they're going to reach out. So like we want people to stay on the website for as long as possible, not necessarily, hey, come to the website and boom, call us right now. What we really want is we want to be able to guide you through the website and have you go to as many pages to learn as much about the remodeling company as possible. So then you can
Build
make a
up
decision.
trust. Yeah.
Yes, based on, hey, do I want to work with this company? I know that they're higher price, but they go through this design process. Is that worth it to me or not?
Yeah.
So basically what we're trying to do here is not necessarily convince people that they have to use you, but make sure that we are getting all the best pieces of your business out onto this website in a cohesive way. So when somebody then is going through your website and they reach out, you know that they're a much higher quality lead compared to if they just reached out immediately without having any sort of insight into process or pricing or the project that you do or any of that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
Cool.
That's website. So you can't do website without knowing who you're going after, what you do that's special, and then the media, because all that stuff is used on the website itself.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you that. So media before website is important because without... I mean, the website just houses the media, but if you have a website and no media, it's just a bunch of text. Is that kind of your...
Yeah, or you use bad photos. I mean, like,
Yeah.
think about it. If, like, I was trying to sell you a new car and I took it with a very old phone and it was very grainy. Like, first off, not only do you lose excitement for the car, but you're also like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here? It's that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So that's where the media comes in of like it needs to look good. You can use bad photos, you can use stock photos, but ultimately a good website with bad photos is going to lose in this industry to a bad website with good photos.
Yeah.
And that is coming from a
Yeah.
company that is like really well known for websites.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So cool. So that's going to be your website. Now all roads lead back to the website, and that's where we get into now how do we get eyeballs on the website. And the first thing that we really like to focus on is SEO, and then we'll talk about the AI stuff. But on SEO, basically you're going to have on the Google side, and now it's starting to shift a little bit, and we have podcasts on that. But on the Google side, you're going to have really like three different when you do a Google search, three different things. One is going to be your Google Ads, which is at the top of the page usually. Google shifts the stuff all around. I think at this point everybody knows what Google Ads are. The second piece is going to be your maps, so it's going to be like the local businesses, and then the third piece is going to be like your like organic section, which is going to be the people that show up like naturally in Google for whatever they're searching for.
Yeah, whatever Google thinks is the actual best result
Yes.
for the answer.
Addressing the Google Ads thing for remodelers, we do not do Google Ads for remodeling companies because we have not found them to be as effective as what they should be.
Yeah, it's not that we haven't tried.
No, we've tried a lot, and we've done it a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that other people haven't figured it out. But if you think about how somebody buys higher end remodeling, now not lower end, but like bath fitters and things like that, where it's like a quick project in and out.
Like I'll see a bunch of ads still for like 1 day bathroom remodel.
That makes sense because like if you are going to do a 1 day bathroom remodel, scale of 1 to 10, how much trust do you have to have built up compared to a whole home remodel?
Not tons. Again, that's like the Airbnb people might be a lot more interested in that. Like
Yes.
I flip it around quickly, it'll look at it in a photo. Cool.
So that's where understanding your ideal client comes in of, does Google Ads even make sense for me? Because basically what you're doing with Google Ads is you're just paying money to get to the top of Google and then show what you want to show off.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of data that shows basically, I think at this point it's like about 5% of the clicks on a Google like search engine page are going to go to ads, which means that the other 95% is going to go to the maps or the organics section of things.
Yeah.
So you're really only competing for 5% of those clicks if you're just doing Google Ads, which the plus side is you don't have to wait for the SEO to work to get to the top, but the downside is as soon as you stop paying, that goes away. And on top of that, Google Ads, the way that the platform is really set up, is it's all around conversions, meaning they want leads.
Yeah.
Google's goal is to get you as many leads as possible, and it actually will optimize around the leads that are coming in. So if you're in an industry where it's not super high volume of leads, it's hard for Google to then optimize around that, and they don't like that. So they really want to be able to work in industries where you're going to get a bunch of leads coming through the door so they can then figure out, okay, we really want to make sure that we're now showing the right ads and all that stuff.
So you mean, are you saying like Google would optimize the campaign for just lead volume? So even if you're going through and being like, I mean, I am getting calls with prospects, but they're not like our ideal client.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and it changes a lot because we don't do as much with Google ads. Like I would not be the best person to say this is exactly how it works.
Okay.
But I do know that like when we have done it like several times over the past, 8-9 years of us doing this for remodeling companies, Google wants, and basically you can set what you want Google to optimize around. So if it's just like we want to get as much traffic to the website, that's fine. If you want to actually optimize around conversions, you get to dictate what a conversion is. So you could say a conversion is simply somebody just going to the site. You could also say it's somebody that went to the site and put in their credit card number. So it's basically like that's how it all works. Is like they want to make sure that they're optimizing as best as possible, but it's up to you to determine. I think the number was like 30. This may be off, but I was like, I thought it used to be like 30 in a week was like the goal of like how many things I wanted to optimize around. Again, this could be way off, but that was like, okay. So with that being said, that's 30 leads a week. First off, are there even 30 people a week that are filling this stuff out across the entire metro area that you're in? Like maybe not. Like, so there's a lot of things that go into that. And then on top of that, because of like the way that the tracking goes is they want a quick conversion. They don't want you to click on a Google ad, look through the website, look through all the projects, all that stuff, and then come back 4 months later and click on it again because maybe the way they track you is gone. So it's like just the natural path in which people are going to hire and research a remodeling company doesn't necessarily align with Google ads as much. So that's why we cannot work 100% because basically you're still getting to the top of Google, but we just kind of look at this and say, look, if we're going to put money into something, we want to put it into your own brand and building it up on, through SEO.
A long term.
Yes.
Okay.
And I had, prospect came in, another one yesterday that said, we've done a lot with Google ads and it used to work really well and it's just not working as well anymore. And I was like, okay, what happened? And he was like, well, just like a backstory in the companies, we used to do like smaller projects, but now we're like full design build. And I was like, okay.
Well, there you go.
And I had to like in a good sales way of saying, okay, let's talk through that. Like, what's your buying process look like? How long does it take? And then we then talked about exactly how Google Ads works. And it was like, okay, maybe this isn't the best piece. So that's where like the SEO stuff comes in of making sure that, even if like you're number one on Google, like the likelihood that they're going to click on you goes way up. I think it's like 34% or something like that. As far as if you're number one on organic for that stuff. So people are going to click on you, but unless you like wow them immediately, the likelihood that they're also going to click on a couple other people is also pretty high because, again, you're about to invite somebody into your home for months, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this stuff. Like, you better do your due diligence in a good way as a homeowner. So you want to make sure that your first impression is very strong, but SEO is your way like that. More people are going to click on it. You're building up your own brand equity. So that's basically what we have seen to be true when it comes to marketing for the website. SEO is going to be like a huge part in all this stuff.
Yeah, I remember, maybe it's changed since then, but I remember we used to say like the website's the house and the SEO is like the road that leads to the house.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the road needs to be appropriate because you have some people that are like, I have good SEO, and for some reason people are not converting into leads. So what we look at is first, let's look at the website. Like, is the website set up for lead conversion? Is it doing the things that we talked about on the website side? Yes or no? Then the next piece is, okay, so you say people are finding you. We looked, and the people are finding you for how to repaint a water stain in the ceiling, which is fine, but is that going to sell a new kitchen?
Yeah, eventually. That's not the kind of person. Yeah,
as and maybe that's like step one of in a while. But basically, when it comes to SEO, you do want to cover the gambit. So if you are a remodeling company, you want to be able to optimize for things like kitchen remodeling near me and like stuff like that. But you also want to make sure that you're building for kitchen remodeling costs. So those are going to be like your transactional keywords are going to be things that are like people are searching that like they're ready to make a transaction. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be your remodeling near me, kitchen remodeling company, things like that. Then you're going to have it's like the buying intent, informational searches. And what that could look like is just all about kitchen costs and timelines and things that like they're not ready to buy yet based off of what they're searching for, but you can tell they're getting close because you typically don't look up costs or timelines or like logistical pieces until you're getting pretty close. And when I say pretty close in this space, that could be 6 to 12 months because it's, like this is a big investment for people. So that could take some time.
Yeah.
Then you've got your next rung up, and that's your more passive looking where it's like kitchen design trends or, what color would go really well with navy cabinets as a backsplash.
Yeah,
and then you have stuff on your website that talks through all those elements where people are just simply like, they've kind of raised their hand and identified, I kind of have a problem starting to search, but I'm nowhere near ready to start to actually search for what I want. I'm just trying to gather some ideas right now. And your goal with SEO should be to get found for all 3 different types of searches, from the specific service up to the buying intent informational searches up to the informational searches, because at the end of the day, somebody's going to educate them. It might as well be you.
Okay. And then all of these things you're talking about are just blogs or different pages that you're adding onto their website.
Correct. So it's going to be a combination of your feature project pages, your service location pages. So basically that's like if you're in Charlotte and you do, kitchens and bathrooms, but you also want to get found in Lake Norman, which is an hour north of here. Well, somebody in Lake Norman may be looking up kitchen remodeling in Lake Norman. You want your page to show up. How do you do that? You have to actually create a page that says, we do kitchen remodeling in Lake Norman, and here's basically how that works.
Gotcha. So we're even going one layer farther in specificity, not just service, but service for location.
Correct. Yeah. Because let's take it back to that basement example. Basement remodeling in Charlotte, terrible digging. Basement remodeling in Lake Norman could be great digging. So it has different price points, different associations with it. Lake Norman is going to be much bigger homes because it's lake homes. So in that basement, you're going to put in a movie theater, and it's going to be a walk out to the lake and all that stuff. So what you're doing for that is actually going to be different than what you're doing, at least in Dilworth and Charlotte, where I live in a 1,900 square foot home. We don't really have much space for a full walkout basement and movie theater in a basement.
Yeah, you're not looking for a movie theater. You're looking for an additional living space down there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where like the contextualizing this stuff into it works. And then the last piece of that, and there's a bunch of stuff that goes into SEO, like press releases that will help, and backlinks and citations and all this stuff. But basically, the last piece on your website is then the blog content, which is talking through those different elements.
Just answering questions people have.
Answering questions, and a lot of this is like questions that people are asking you in person, but also what they're typing into Google.
Yeah.
Because if they're asking you this in person, the likelihood that they're typing it into Google is like 10 times higher. So being able to talk through basement trends for Lake Norman, and that would be talking about the walkout basement, the pool table, the game room, the gym. Like, hey, up here in Lake Norman, we don't have as many gyms. So what are a lot of people doing? Putting gyms into their basement, versus here in Charlotte, it's like there's a gym on every corner. So again, you're kind of contextualizing it to each thing. And even if it's like, well, the way that, maybe Lake Norman would be, let's say it's the same style of like building, and like it's not actually that different, you still need to make it feel way more relevant and talk through what you're doing in those certain locations to really, again, make it feel specific. So if somebody's in Lake Norman is looking up like basement trends, or just basement trends, if they're in Lake Norman and there's one that pops up for Charlotte and one that pops up for Lake Norman, they're going to click on the Lake Norman one.
Lake Norman. Okay, that makes sense.
So that's where the SEO stuff comes in. It also helps you get, if you do all that stuff correctly, you're building up enough authority on your website that Google's like, okay, you know a lot about basements and you talk about all this stuff, and you also have a page dedicated to this. This person in Lake Norman just searched for a basement remodeler near me. We want to show you because we trust you.
So then you're not just you're not just raising the blogs themselves in search, but it raises the site's ranking as a whole?
Correct.
Okay.
So like the way that I like to describe it is it's like a whole vote system. So basically if you have a blog that does really well, all right, and it performs for the right thing you want to perform for, Google looks at it very favorably. And if that blog then says, hey, we actually have a service associated with it, and you can link from that blog to the relevant page, it'll prop that page up as well, because it's like a strength in
People
numbers
like
thing.
this, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's the if A equals B, B equals C, then A equals C. It's that idea.
Communicative property.
Yeah, I think it's the is that what it is?
I don't know. I think so.
I think it's I think it's about something about transferring, like transformative property. I don't know. We did this in math.
Yeah.
But either way, and that's sometimes what we need to do with clients, where we have like a client out in like the Berkeley area, and he's like, I really want to be in Marin County, which is a couple towns over. And we're like, look, what we actually need to do first is right now in Berkeley, you are like number 5, let's say on average across the board.
Okay.
Over in Marin County, you're like page 3 because, we have not done SEO yet. Instead of just saying, great, let's just build out Marin County, we're saying, hey, let's actually get you to the top of Berkeley first, because we want to make sure that we're capturing as many people coming to it. But on top of that, if you're number 1 there, Google looks at you as very strong. Then when you're able to like link out to like the Marin County one,
it might raise the other one.
it'll raise the other one a little bit more.
Sure.
So there is a strategy that's associated with this of, instead of just saying, hey, I want to be number 1 in Charlotte, it might be faster for you to actually get number 1 in Lake Norman and then piggyback that into Charlotte. So now Charlotte's starting a little bit higher up naturally.
Okay. Cool.
So
okay.
that's all the stuff that factors into it. It's, we want to know what services and what areas people want to be in, because if you're saying, I just want to do basements in Charlotte, and I'm like, great, but all your Google reviews say that you do kitchens in Lake Norman an hour away, Google's smart. They're going to look at that and go, well, if you want to get found for kitchens in Lake Norman, no problem. But like basements in Charlotte, like, we trust you as a brand, but we don't know if we trust you in Charlotte to do basements. So
it's too many jumps.
It's too many jumps. So there's all that stuff that comes into it. And then you have the next layer of all this stuff, which is the AI stuff. And that's like the generative engine optimization.
Okay.
That's what GEO, and everybody has different names for it. But basically, when you go to like a ChatGPT or a Gemini, like, how are you getting found? And we've done a bunch of like testing on this stuff already, and the good SEO principles still play out very well. We're like, basically, if you're not, like, I think one of the last times we tested it through ChatGPT was like, if you weren't like top 5 on Google, not Bing, but on Google for the search term, they weren't going to consider showing you.
On ChatGPT?
On ChatGPT.
Really?
Yep. So they're all in flux right now, or they're all kind of figuring it all out. And there are different nuances. It's not just if you just do SEO, you will get found on those other platforms. Because, for example, like historically, you never needed Reddit as like a main thing to get found on, for Google. But now ChatGPT specifically likes Reddit a lot. So
yeah, you can just see it when you look stuff up now. Like, Reddit gets cited on Google, on ChatGPT,
and each one has their own individual thing. So like, I think ChatGPT like loves Wikipedia, right? And Wikipedia is more informational searches, factual things, versus like you wouldn't go to Wikipedia to find a remodeling company in Charlotte, but Google has been doing local search since the beginning of the internet. So like they probably have their stuff dialed way more in, so they're not relying on Reddit or Wikipedia
I wouldn't panic if like ChatGPT is going to take over local search. Like I saw Sam Altman, the CEO the other day, was like, look, Google has a massive lead on us with local search. Like there's a lot more things that you need to know that ChatGPT doesn't have real-time access to, that like we aren't even trying to compete with them on that.
Yeah, so that's kind of like when, like 5 years ago, when like all the different like metaverses came out, and there was this race of like whose metaverse was going to be like the main one.
Yeah,
that's kind of how this is right now, where because people are using ChatGPT, which is kind of heavily focused on Bing, but now maybe they're not as focused on Bing. Like then you have Gemini, which is Google's one, and that's now like ingrained into
it's all Google.
So you just need to basically be diverse enough where, Google trusts you, ChatGPT trusts you. It's a lot of different things that need to happen, of like you showing up on all these different sites and doing all these things. But basically, the core SEO principles still are going to carry you like 80, 90% of the way there.
Okay.
But like, these feature project pages, like just like with Google, ChatGPT does not. If you go to ChatGPT and say, I want you to find me a local remodeling company in Charlotte, and they find you a crap one, the likelihood that you're going to go back to ChatGPT to find the next one is lower.
Yeah.
That's not what they want.
No.
So there's that difference. And then like, I firmly believe in 5 years, maybe on the minimum, but like, maybe a little bit after that, it's going to get down to the point where like, at this point, like my my own ChatGPT knows more about me than my wife does. So like if I'm now going to it and saying, hey, find me a remodeler,
It has the context for your values, what you're,
way more than even my neighbor. Of like, hey, who'd you use? So now it becomes a big game of like, how well can we tell the stories of our clients and make sure that these search engines and these AI tools are able to find it. So back to that, growing family example, like if I went in there right now and I lived in their service area and said, I'm looking for a remodeler, they, in a perfect world, would be able to look at their site and say, hey, I know, because I'm attached to your Pinterest, I know what design styles that you like. I know that you have a second kid on the way.
Yeah.
I know that, you don't want to blow the budget out of the water, but you want this thing to be done correctly. Who I found was this person that does design ahead of time.
It's matching it for you.
And what we're seeing, and they have a lot of research that's coming out on this, is that the trust that is built up with what ChatGPT and Gemini and these things are coming back with is way higher than just a simple Google search, because it's now taking a lot of context into it, and people are just associating the trust that they've built up with these platforms, like with ChatGPT, and transferring that into the business. So like we are going like all in on this stuff, but it really still comes down to, if I'm asking ChatGPT, who should I use? And it knows I have small kids, but Aaron's Remodeling's website talks nothing about kids or safety or things like that, but somebody else does. Like I guarantee you, if the company that Chris worked for, if they were all set up with it and I said, my issue, and at this point I use a lot of voice into my ChatGPT, but I'm like, we have this basement, it's 6'8" down to 7'8". I don't even know if we can dig through it. Is that even possible? It would be able to pop up and say, actually, there's somebody that's done this exact thing. Here's this case study of them doing it. By the way, they have great reviews and they do design and they are, big into, not big into children, that sounds bad, but they're big into like child proofing stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So that would then, I'd be like, okay, this is great. Like all the heavy lifting has been done for me. So I think you give it 5 years, and I think people are going to start to see referrals themselves
decreasing.
Get replaced by these AI tools, because people are going to trust those that much more.
If you had started off and you asked me that at the beginning of the podcast, I probably would have disagreed. Maybe I wouldn't have told you, but I would have secretly disagreed.
He's like, yeah, tell me more.
But no, I'm fully with you now. That makes a ton of sense.
And I think it's people are gonna have to get more used to it. And like, if you've seen the movie Her, I love tech. I couldn't get through that. It was too weird for me.
Yeah, that was a tough watch.
Yeah.
I watched it on a plane. No good.
Yeah, so it's just too odd for me. But like, I think it's gonna get to that point where like, if I pull up my ChatGPT right now and I just say roast me, it is like the best roast. It'll hit me so deep, and I'm like, damn, like this was so well done. And I'll be like, okay, now do it as Dr. Seuss, and it like puts it in like a limerick, but it's still like hitting like so. It just knows so much about this stuff that like it's just going to continue that direction. So that's like the idea here, is that like this is what we are wanting to build around, but a lot of this comes down to understanding who you're going after, what you do that's special, but then making sure that that is getting out there so people are able to see it. Because we see a lot of websites that come to us where their existing SEO company or they themselves are like, I built out all the stuff you told me to build out, and I'm not getting a bunch of traffic or leads. And I'm like, yes, 80% of the pages, Google doesn't even know that they exist, so they're not even showing them. And it may be, or Google knows that they exist, but they think it's a crap page because it just looks like you just copy and pasted it across the board. That's not valuable to them. So they're just going to say, hey, we know it exists, but we're not actually going to show it. So again, you just spent all this time and energy doing this thing for no reason. So there's a whole level of like technical side of this stuff that comes into play.
Okay.
So that's SEO and GEO. So now at this point, we're really capturing the people that are getting closer to buying using the internet. Then the last piece here is going to be if you think about like marketing as that funnel, this is your top of the funnel stuff. This is going to be your pieces that are like the billboards, the video marketing.
Now we're getting back to that example of the billboard at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're getting back to that stuff and like the golf cards, sponsorships and stuff like that. It's not that those things are not correct, but you just want to make sure that like, if you were really a product that was set up to sell in Costco, your best bet is just to go to Costco and do it, not go to the golf course and say, hey, next time you go to Costco, look for our stuff. You want to hit them like when the iron's hot. And this is when we do like videos for clients and we talk about, well, how do I use them? It's like you can actually run these as like ads around the areas, but it's not meant to like drive sales through the door right now. It's really meant to be like top of mind branding as a whole.
When somebody gets to the point where they're looking for it, they're like, well, who do I know in the area? And they've seen your ads.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And like for these, like we don't send them like, hey, here's a project we just did. Call us. It's like, here's a project we just did in your area, and you can like run this as like an ad directly around that location. If you want to see more of the project, click this page or click this link, and it's going to send them over to that featured project page that's going to walk through the before, the process, and the after to really sell that full experience. But that's basically like what we want that branding pieces to be, because it's really focused on not so much like people that are searching for this. It's going to be people that are like hopefully in the right demographic, because if you're in a neighborhood that you want to do more work in, the best thing to do, just like how you're like able to do direct mailers to the area or like Canvas, or even if you have your truck parked out front for 3 months straight, like the people that live there are going to see it. To do that online is not through Google, because that's then based around them actually Googling and searching for it. It's going to be more around like, can we just say we know they live in this area?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and show them and show this thing off. That's the idea.
Okay. That makes, then you actually have the context built up that now this can be a solid investment.
And that's where social media comes in. So like one of the people talked to yesterday, he was like, the leads that come in through social are great. They're just not as many as we need, but they're great. And it's because they're showing off the projects. They're talking through all the things that makes them valuable to their ideal client.
Yeah.
The issue with just doing normal social media is that you're typically only going to get a few hundred views or a couple likes and stuff like that. Ads are an easy way to get more views much quicker and faster.
Well, and targeted as well. Especially,
Exactly.
I mean, like you're so bound by location. You could get 1 million views, but if it's spread all over the country,
What's the point?
Yeah.
Correct. So that's the idea of this stuff, is that yes, there's like some social proof of like you have a bunch of followers and things like that, but ultimately being able to just, run lower cost ads that just highlight a project in a certain area. Again, maybe people that see it are never gonna ever buy from you, or maybe people that are getting kind of close, but now you're getting your name out there the same way that like a billboard would be out there, but now instead of a billboard just saying, here's my company, call me or go to my website, or if it's dangerous enough, I don't even know if they like allow you to put a QR code. I can't imagine they do on a billboard, but now you're able to show off a project in a way that it's like cool, and then you're saying like click here to go explore more, and it gets them back to that page.
Yeah. Okay. Bringing them back into the resources you've already built up. Yeah.
That's how everything works. So it's ideal client, unique selling and value propositions, then the media, then you want to build the website the same way that you want to build out your resume and keep that recent, and if you have a new project, make sure you add it on there. Then it's the SEO and the GEO side. Then finally you're going to go into like the more branding components, and that's how we do it. Again, there's other components of like, could we have a whole department here for like billboards or like golf course card sponsorships? Sure, but like it's getting to the point where it's becoming harder and harder to be like really good at the thing because of like just how much competition's out there. So being able to like really niche down into a few things really well is the same thing of like your higher end design build remodeling company, you doing a home and then also someone's drywall and then also someone's outdoor living space and then also someone's fence. It's going to be very difficult versus doing a few things really well. And that's basically how it all works.
Nice. Okay.
How'd I do on explaining that?
I thought you did pretty good. I'm still holding on to that one thing I said. I don't remember what it was at this point, but you said it was, if you could say it, you'd say it like me.
Yeah. So if you're in the higher end remodeling world, that's how it all works. Now, if you're more production remodeling, it's going to be a little bit different. If you're outside, it's going to be a little bit different and stuff like that. So this works very specifically for like higher end interior remodeling companies. Make sure that you identify all this stuff, show it off online, because basically any marketing that you do should align with these pieces and should be very intentional in and of itself.
Nice.
That's all I got.
I thought it was pretty good. I'll give it a 10 out of 10.
Okay. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.